I'm J.G. Michael, and this is Parallax Views. This edition of Parallax Views is brought to you by the $10 and above tier supporters of Parallax Views on Patreon. So, with that in mind, producers credit shoutouts to Galen, Matt, Gunnar, Mark, Simon, Alexander, Catherine, G, Tilo, Emilia, Jeremy, Jeff, John, Bert, Brian, Elliot, Michael, Brace, James, Nick, Mersham, Galen, Gareth, Arlen, Bo, Christopher, Michael, Gigadelic Media, Will, Chance, Chase, Dan, Big Bob, David H, Y. Kellerman, Sadeed 13, Kathleen, David, Ava, Bob, The West Bank Robbery Podcast, Jamie, Enoch, Gary, Max, Ishtofer, James, Martin, Matthew Ho, Brian, Nobody, Thomas, and Dano. And now on to the show.
In this town on Valentine's Day, everybody loses their heart.
It looks like Harry Warden's back in town.
In the town of Valentine Bluffs, there are many ways to die. Take your pick. My Bloody Valentine.
Hey there, Parallax Views listeners. What you just heard was a TV spot for the cult classic Valentine's Day slasher from 1981, My Bloody Valentine, which was later remade in 2009 with a 3D gimmick and a cast that included Jensen Ackles, that was directed by Wes Craven protege Patrick Lussier. The original film, though, is where it all started, and it has gained quite a cult following over the years. So much so that a feature-length, professionally done fan film sequel was made a few years back entitled Valentine Bluffs. I was recently going through some old interviews that I did and found that I had an interview with the director of said fan film, Tom Smith, and lead actress Rachel Keefe. So I thought, since it is Valentine's Day, it was time to finally release this conversation. And by the way, if you want to watch the fan film, you can do it right now on YouTube. As a fan film, it is available free of charge. We'll also be talking about another film that you'll be seeing actress Rachel Keefe in very soon, entitled The Fetus. That's coming out next month in March. And not only is Rachel Keefe in it, but also Terrifier 2 and 3's Lauren Levera, as well as genre stalwart Bill Moseley of Rob Zombie's House of a Thousand Corpses and Tobe Hooper's Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. All that and much more in the conversation to follow with Valentine Bluffs director Tom Smith and actress Rachel Keefe. Welcome to Parallax Views. Tom Smith, the filmmaker behind Valentine Bluffs, a My Bloody Valentine fan film, and also with us, Rachel Keefe, who plays the lead female in Valentine Bluffs. How are you both doing?
Good. How are you?
You're good. Yeah.
I'm doing great. And I enjoyed this fan film. I've been watching a few fan films and covering them on my show lately. I think there's a lot of interesting ones that come out now. I was telling you that, Tom, before the show. You know, most fan films, I think people think, oh, these are going to be unprofessional or look very amateur. But now you're seeing a glut of fan films like Friday the 13th Vengeance, the Womp Stomp Films, Never Hike Alone films, and of course, Valentine Bluffs. So, I feel like the landscape of fan films is changing. Would you like to talk about that a little, Tom? And maybe you could also comment, Rachel.
I think fan films got stepped up a good bit. I think the first quality one that I've seen was the Never Hike Alone. I think it was shot really well. Might not be everybody's cup of tea, but and then Vengeance 2 is my favorite fan film. I think them guys knocked it out of the park. Jason Brooks and his whole team did a really good job with like the quality of it, the sound, the score, the kills, like everything was pretty good. Acting was all like pretty good. Usually like these fan films, they'll fall in certain aspects, like either the story isn't good or the acting's not good or the effects are not good, but everything else kind of is good. What we tried to do was make everything decent, like get good actors, get a good music score, tell a good story, have some good effects. So I think that's, as far as like the fan film, I never actually I mean, we have to say fan film because of licensing, but me, I always thought like I wanted to make a really cool sequel to My Bloody Valentine.
You want to add to that at all, Rachel, or?
So I'm not very cool. I haven't seen any like super cool fan films. But I know that just from what I'm hearing, that a lot of people are like bringing their game to fan films. So ever since I did this one, I was like, I really want to check out other ones. So now I'm like more interested in checking them out. I need to get on top of my horror movie watching. That is for sure. I am not as knowledgeable as like some of my really close friends on the film, like Christina or Penelope. They like, you name a film, they'll like explain it. I'm over here like, yeah, I think I saw that. Like, I really have to get better at watching horror films, but because I like them. So like I like more like thriller, but I want to see what other filmmakers are doing, and maybe it'll help us like learn from other people too. So yeah.
So, Tom, for people that don't know, maybe you can give a little background on My Bloody Valentine, and also, what led you to do a sequel to My Bloody Valentine?
Yeah, that was, I mean, My Bloody Valentine was it was made in 81, came out in 81, about the coal miner in a town called Valentine Bluffs. And it was just like a blue collar working town, miners. And then that's why, like, what attracted me, that was like my favorite film growing up.
It's really like one of the big slashers of that golden age of slashers from like the late 70s to the early 80s. And it's weird because, of all the slashers out there, a lot of them have sequels, but My Bloody Valentine never had a sequel. It had that remake in 2009, I believe. But really, other than that, it's been sort of a quiet favorite for a lot of people.
It's definitely a cult. It had a cult following because from my understanding, I think it didn't have like the theatrical release that it was supposed to have. And it didn't have a franchise, so it's not as big as Friday the 13th, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Nightmare on Elm Street kind of deal. So, but to me, it was always my favorite movie growing up. It was like one of the first horror movies that I seen. And it just stuck with me. It was like, that was the reason why I wanted to go to special effects school, just seeing all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so the reason we wanted to do, the sequel to that is because I think there's so many people, including I'm always like, I want to make a film that I want to see, so there's so many people out there that I know that always wanted to see a sequel. There was supposed to be a sequel, written a long time ago, and it just never got made. So yeah, that was the reason, like, about that, it was like, we wanted to do it. I remember like a joke we were always talking about was when people kept asking me like, why My Bloody Valentine fan film? I said, because there's too many Friday the 13th fan films out there.
There's so many Friday the 13th ones and Halloween ones. I kind of like it when people pick the movies that you wouldn't expect. Like there was a fan film that Dave McRae, who's a pretty big YouTuber now, did called It's Me Billy, and it was a Black Christmas fan film. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. Someone's doing a Black Christmas fan film. Now there's I know they're working on a Wes Craven's New Nightmare sequel that's like a fan sequel with Miko Hughes, the actor from the Wes Craven's New Nightmare. So I kind of like it when there's fan films that are based on properties that, you know, you don't see a bunch of fan films of.
Yeah, that was like that was the reason why we wanted to do it. It's just one of my favorite films. And how it went all about was I had the idea of a story, and I remember being at a horror convention in Cincinnati and just getting a picture with a cosplayer. And years later, now I'm talking like 4 years later, I had the idea, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna try to find that cosplayer.
Was that Chuck Ryan?
Yeah, not even knowing who this guy was, not knowing how I can get in touch with him. I just started like reaching out to a bunch of people that I know at conventions and was like, hey, do you know this guy? And then someone was like, check out Chuck Ryan. And I looked him up on social media, found him. You know, I wrote him a message and was like, hey, is this you in this picture? Is this your cosplay? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, hey, I want to, can we talk? We exchanged, phone numbers and, just went about like just talking, saying like, hey, I had this idea. I remember when I first pitched it to him, he didn't seem too excited on the phone. He was just like, oh yeah, that's cool. And I hung up and I was telling my wife, I was like, man, I threw in the best pitch I could possibly give him. And he didn't sound too excited about that. And then like I found out later on, he was super excited, just like hiding it, playing it cool.
Oh.
He's like, oh, I was super excited. I was so down to do that as soon as you said that.
So when you met him, was he when you first met him, was he cosplaying as like the miner, or what was he cosplaying as?
I like I said, I got a picture with a cosplayer. I didn't know who it was him. It was just somebody I just seen at a convention. I used to vend at conventions. I still do, but I was in Cincinnati at Horror Hound vending, and like every time I see a cool cosplayer, I just like try to get a picture with him, and that stuck with me. Like his costume was so detailed, and until like one of my favorite films, I was like, man, it's really cool. And I pitched him the idea. He's like, do you have a script? And I was like, no, but give me a couple weeks and I'll have a script for you. I sent him a short film that I did, Hunting for Justice, and he was like,
which
oh,
Rachel is also in that one too, right?
Yeah, she's all. It's out of all the films I've worked with Rachel, that is my favorite death scene.
Hunting for Justice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of my favorites. So, so that's how it all came about, and it was just like meeting up with him, and then, I never even met him personally till like 2 years after that, till we shot a concept trailer. So it was like a lot of phone conversations and production meetings over the phone, Zoom, and just getting stuff prepared for that. And then like we finally got everybody together just to get together for a weekend and shoot this concept trailer to release out there, to help maybe like raise an indie, like to do the Indiegogo campaign. Because at that time, I don't even think we were prepared to do that. It was like, we're going to try to do it on our own, and that's how that all went down. And we,
what out of curiosity, was there any specific aspect of My Bloody Valentine that really stuck out to you that sort of made it a favorite of yours?
The minor costume.
Right.
Yeah. And like I said, it was just a bunch of blue collared people, like adults.
It's very different than a lot of slashers. I'm sorry I interrupted you, but I get excited when talking about this movie because it's very different than a lot of other slashers. It's kind of it's almost like a more mature slasher. Like there's those sort of teen hijinks elements, but these are all adult characters, and there's a whodunit aspect to it that you also play at in Valentine Bluffs. But it's very different than a lot of the other slasher films.
Yeah, that was, like I said, that was why it was one of the films that stuck out to me. It wasn't like a group of teenagers going away from their family and they couldn't be around anybody. These are grown adults that were getting killed off, and there was a story behind it, a really good story, and like a love story. It was like a love triangle, which I really thought was really cool. You don't really see that. So again, it was just like something I seen when I was younger and it stuck to me. It's something I can watch all the time and not get bored of.
So after you do the concept trailer, how does the film sort of come together after that? And then Rachel, maybe you can talk a little bit about how you became cast in the film as one of the leads.
Yeah. So when we were shooting the concept trailer, it was like one of the hardest things that, like, a lot of films, they go through a lot of hard issues. We hit our hardest one on that concept trailer where COVID hit. Like when we were like on that set, and like 10 people came down with COVID. Rachel's like a superhero. She doesn't get COVID. So like incredible how she's been on like around people that had COVID and doesn't get it. But I got COVID and I ended up being rushed to the hospital like a few weeks later, and going into a coma and being on life support and waking up like a month later, not knowing what happened. And finding out that later on, like, they were calling my wife saying I wasn't gonna make it. I know Rachel was more, on just, I know like people were posting on their social media, I really didn't look at any of that. I didn't really want to look at any of that. But I ended up coming home like 2.5 months later. I had to go to like a rehabilitation hospital, learn how to walk again. So the film wasn't even going to happen. I told everybody I didn't want to do it no more. I didn't want to go on set. I didn't want to be around anybody. And I couldn't sculpt. I couldn't do like, make prosthetics and makeup or anything like that. It took a long time. And
yeah, because I was going to say that's your sort of main sort of career, is the sick and twisted effects, right?
Yeah. So I'm a special effects artist, just like to make films, too, But yeah, that was the hardship of it, and it almost didn't happen. And then it took like a few weeks after I got home to finally talk to my family and say, they were the ones that kind of talked me into it. They were like, "Yeah, you should really do it. You just put a lot of work into it, and I like the script, and go and make it," and really talked me into it. And then we decided to like make it, and then it was scheduled to be like a short film, and then when Chuck Ryan came on, he was a big part of getting sponsors. We got Fright Rags as a sponsor, and Nightmare Toys, like big companies like that, and then it snowballed into something much bigger, which allowed me to make it a feature, and then bring on the cast that I wanted to work with, which is where Rachel came in. Like, she was one of the first persons I cast it. And you can tell her about that. She was casted for a different role. It was so funny how that didn't play out, but
Yeah.
yeah. So you can tell you about that one.
Yeah, let's get into that, Rachel. How'd you get involved with the film?
Tom's very generous and let me audition. I probably because I harassed him and I'm like, when's your next film? And then like I was in it. But yeah, so I auditioned for, what's her name? I forget now. Allie? No, what was her name? What? Abby, something. Abby. And I think I was Abby during the trailer, and Chuck Ryan was my significant other, I guess, in that or something. And Roland and Tom were like watching it and they were like, she looks too like a little, like it looks not right age wise, like for that. And I was like, all right. And then another guy that they picked to, I think if this is correct, Tom, please let me know. And then they picked Nick. No.
Yeah, Nick was the original. He was the first person we cast for Peter.
And then Joe.
But
Joe.
they both.
And I think so. I don't know if I still look too young or they just already committed to having me be Kelly, which is totally fine. Both characters are awesome. So then he's like, hey, like, I want you to read for Kelly. Like, I already watched your audition. It was great, but like, I just want to see. And I did, and I guess I did well. And then Sarah got Abby's role, which she like crushed it, obviously. So it all worked out. But that was funny because I guess I looked too young next to the other people and it would have looked kind of creepy or weird. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong.
It kind of looked like he was like a pedophile next door.
But I don't know that I could see you in a role with like one of the older dudes that was at the bar. Yeah, that would look kind of odd.
Yeah, so I mean, teach their own, but yeah. So yeah, that was cool, and I didn't really realize how significant of a role Kelly was until like halfway shooting. Like, not that it wasn't significant, like I was like, I have a part, this is amazing, like every character has a voice that needs to be heard, but like the whole wrapping it into it being like TJ's daughter and just the whole drama with it, I was like, oh wow. So that was cool watching it after, because you're only there to film your part and you read the script and everything like 1,000 times, but then when you watch it you're like, oh, that like hit harder. So yeah, I'm trying to think. Yeah.
Yeah, there's kind of a like fake out element at first because I thought the, main characters were going to be, uh, I forget, TJ's son or Axel's son,
Right.
So,
Tom.
yeah, Peter.
Yeah, Peter and his girlfriend, but Kelly ends up being,
Yeah.
really at the center of a lot of this.
And I
Yeah,
didn't realize that until like it wasn't right away. Like I was like, oh, cool. And then I was watching and seeing like pickup shots, and I was like, oh, like I don't know, it just didn't like I don't know, maybe I'm dumb, but I just like didn't realize. Like I was like, oh wow, and yeah, cool.
yeah. I remember earlier, like the earlier stages of the scripts, like because I think I had like 11 revisions from the original script. And
Yeah,
remember, there was supposed to be two daughters.
right.
Two like TJ was supposed to have two daughters, and there was two boyfriends involved in it. And then that all got trimmed up, and then there was a one of the scripts where Peter was coming into town by himself and hooks up with a bartender there, and leaves with her, and then goes and gets drunk, and then it would have picked up where it was. But again, the way I'm glad it like we kept it the way we wanted, we made it because I think it played off a lot better.
Were you always planning on having, so for people that don't know, TJ is one of the survivors from the original film. Were you always planning to bring back some of the characters from the original film? Because it takes place 40 years later, so you probably could have found a way to not include them, but did you want to include those characters?
Yeah. So when I had the idea, I knew the beginning, and I knew how it was going to end. Um, and like I said, I knew that we were going to play it off where Sarah was pregnant at the end of the original, and knew it, and knew it was Axel's child. That's and you like if you remember in the original where she comes running back into the mine when like someone yells he's alive, she's like has to go back and see him. Even though like this guy just tried to kill him, she still had something, had feelings for him, and and then he like wanted cuts his own off and like leaves. And we knew like I was going to play off of that where she was pregnant, and the whole twist would have been like whose child was it.
So then I was curious, since you do, makeup effects and whatnot, I wanted to ask Rachel, I've had a lot of guests on in the past that will tell me about their experiences having makeup done on them. So like Linnea Quigley from Night of the Demons would tell me stories about, oh, it took so long and it was daunting. People like Doug Bradley will have stories like that as well. What was the experience of being in the makeup chair like for you?
For this film specifically, it was cool. So we did, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this. We did two
Yeah.
shoots. Okay. We did one shoot where I was like totally like beat up, like super like gory. I think I had like a huge thing taken out of my cheek. I don't know. I like honestly, I'm not gonna lie to you. What we filmed first and second kind of like blends sometimes because it was such a big like break, and emotionally as the actor I felt like it was the same day, not the same day like logically, but like in the character. So I think the first one though, the first shoot, I was totally like wrecked, giving more credit to the fact that I died, I guess, because that like shocked people. The second time we went to the shoot, to the mine, we had like a time crunch. And was it the first time that my prosthetics weren't working, or the second?
The second.
The second. So like the first time we did it, it was cool. I put like a video reel on my social media of like Tom putting on the makeup from the first day and the second day. And it actually goes by really quick with Tom. Like some other special effects I've done doesn't, maybe because I enjoy being there and like the company. But the only part that was hard was taking it off afterwards.
Why is
But
that?
so we were at a mine and we were rushing around, and I brought like with Tom's special effects, like his blood, it doesn't stain and it's like good on my skin, but taking it like it's I think Tom's FX is the most believable I've ever seen or worked with, to be honest with you. Like, I'll watch some films and I'll be like, oh, Tom's better. Like, just because I've seen what he can do. And anyway, back to the makeup. Yes, I don't know why it was so hard to get off. I didn't have alcohol spray. I had makeup wipes, but I don't know if it's because we were rushing or the temperature, because I know sometimes when the temperature is different, it's harder to get off or put on. I don't know if I'm answering your question. Am I still answering the question? Okay. But it went by really quick. Tom's done like one movie we did, Backroad. He did like a crazy FX where like my mouth's like blown out because I was shot. So this went like pretty quick, but
Yeah, we don't like to talk about that stupid movie.
yeah, it's cool. It's cool. But it was good. I mean, some FX I do like hurts my skin, or the blood stains everywhere, but Tom's is like perfect. So yeah, the only bad thing was the temperature in the mine. I don't know if it was too
So it made it harder to get it off because of the temperature?
I don't know. Like,
It's
so
hard getting on.
getting it on, we were like in the mine, and Tom was like, all right, like I think it's too cold in here. So we had to go back out of the mine and put my makeup on. And then coming down in the mine, I had to like make sure my cheeks were still kind of like warm, because I think if it got colder, it like I honestly was mentally trying to get into character. So I don't remember, like I black out sometimes when I'm trying to get into character, but I remember it like not sticking correctly and then taking it off. I don't know why. Maybe it's because it was my face, but it like I have a video and like I'm trying to like we're all like trying to rip it off and we can't. I think am I correct with the temperature
Yeah,
thing?
it was definitely there was issues with the prosthetics going on and being applied in the mine. It was just really cold.
Yeah,
And
and that's the day when we had a time crunch. Like the first time we filmed, we had all day there and they were really cool about it. Not that they weren't cool the second time, but they were like, okay, like you guys are back. Like, they're a business. And I think we owned like the first day we had like maybe 8 hours there. And then the second time was like what, like 4 or 5? It was like cut in half. So we were all like scrambling and
no,
it's in a
we definitely had more time there. We actually, I think we were there for like 12 hours the second time.
really?
Yeah, we were. I remember.
Oh, I thought they were like rushing us.
No, I remember at lunchtime we were like, "Oh, we're way ahead of schedule." Next thing you know, like 3 hours later, we're like 3 hours late, and
Yeah, I don't
running
know
around.
why I thought we were being rushed. Maybe you were just like, we have to get this done. So like,
We just had so much to shoot.
yeah.
So one thing that was really difficult was we shot this feature length film in 9 days, and then when we were in post, I was like getting footage from the editor, and I wasn't liking it, and especially the mine scene. And I was like, man, we definitely, I'm not really feeling what's getting cut together.
What weren't you liking about it? Why wasn't it gelling for you?
Uh, well, that's a whole different story. Like we had another editor, and what he was giving me, I wasn't really happy with. And it was taking forever to get that footage, and it was just like, wow, I'm not liking this. And then I started showing it to the producers, and they were feeling the same thing. I was like questioning myself, like, man, did we make a bad movie? Like, it wasn't shot right. And so I talked to my camera guy, John, and he came on as editor, and then he started cutting certain things together, and I was like, okay, this is much better, and this is what I'm like. This is the look that I'm going for. And then he took on the job of editing, and I learned how to edit, and we were like kind of doing it together. But one thing I didn't like was the mine. Um, it was good, but I just thought we could have made it much better. More action packed, and like the fight scene I thought could have been much longer. The death scene for the deputy was completely different. So it's just like, okay, I think we can make this much better. So we planned it out, and we went back into the mine for a reshoot like a month, maybe a month and a half later after that. And I'm glad we did, because like the ending was completely different, and we killed the deputy off much more brutal. The fight scene was much better. Rachel's death scene was completely like not different, but it was set up differently. Which the only like it was so weird because like there's so much positivity for the film, and everybody's like really liking it. But the one thing that I keep hearing is they were confused about her dying. like she she gets carried out of the mine and the very next
Yeah, I
scene.
was gonna say I was kind of bummed out by that. I liked Rachel's character. I was like, whoa,
Yeah,
you're I'm tripping now. You got rid of her at the end? What?
Tom
yeah.
just likes to
Well,
kill me.
she was well,
Like
she
in
was
every
always,
film, he's like, I think she should die. Like,
I just actually seen an actor. He was like, how you tell a good script if the character lives. So he's like, I can always be in the sequel. Um,
hey,
she was her character was always meant to die, and like she was saying earlier, she was much more beaten up the original time we went in there. There, in her scene with the miner in that photo studio, she gets beat up really bad. It just got trimmed up, and then we cut the original mine scene, and when we went back, she wasn't as more beat up, and it wasn't as more brutal as it looked. So it kind of like, she was always meant to die, but when we went back in there, we didn't have time to do the makeup that we did the first time. So yeah, I get it, and like, but yeah, she was. I just tell people like, just think about it. Like, you don't have to be bleeding out to die. Like, you can go into shock and die. So it was just like, all right, she went to the hospital. Maybe she went in shock. You know, leaving the mind of the audience like to figure it out. But yeah, that was like the only thing that was like people kept asking me like, oh, I was really confused about that. Sorry about that.
Rachel, I was going to ask you. So one of the big scenes that you have, and I don't want to like spoil the movie too much, but you have that scene where you have your first sort of confrontation with the miner, and it starts out as like a sexy scene, romance scene between you and your boyfriend, and then it goes to like terrifying where you're running away from the killer. Like, what was it like shooting that scene? How do you switch on from like, oh, I'm playing sexy Kelly, now I'm playing terrified Kelly?
I don't know if it was good, but so obviously I've never been in a position where I'm being chased and potentially killed, thank the Lord. So I don't like, as an actress with horror films, that's like something I definitely struggle with because I want it to be believable. But the situations ever happened to me, sometimes I've had to watch, like, not to sound weird, but sometimes I've had to like research uh what your body does when you're in fight or flight, or sometimes videos of things that you don't really want to watch, but you're like, what is their reaction? And this probably is making me sound like a crazy person, but like, I just want to do so well with the storytelling, and it's a pivotal moment, so I want it to be believable. So I did watch some stuff. I watched other actors in horror films and how they reacted. I read stories about how people have reacted to traumatic experiences, but as the actor in that, we're cuddling, and I'm like, as the actor, not as like the character. So as the actor, we're cuddling, and I'm like, all right, like, here it comes. Like, he's gonna turn on the light. I don't want to ruin anything, but the killer comes.
A
So
month.
basically, I just tried to be like more in like shock, but like, obviously if you turn on a light and someone's there, you're going to like scream. So I just tried to trigger that fight or flight and tried to make it as believable as possible. Like, if someone was literally chasing me, usually when I'm in my fight or flight, personally, I freeze, and I don't like, I literally like freeze, and I can't even audibly make sound, but like, I don't know if that's normal for most people. So I kind of just like freaked out, and I hope it was believable, but yeah, that it was definitely difficult trying to service the material under fiction circumstances. I know that's like my job as an actor, but when it comes to like getting killed or dying or being threatened, it's like, a little different. Um I think I answered your question.
Yeah. Well, the other thing was like people always ask me when I have actresses or actors on, like for some reason people always want to know like, oh, you're doing this like romance scene where you're cuddling with a boyfriend or you're doing something sexy with the boyfriend character, and people always be like, is that awkward because you're just doing this with a stranger? And I'm like, I've always said I don't think it is for a lot of actors. It's just acting. But maybe you could speak
Uh,
to that.
So it definitely depends who you're doing it with, that's for sure. I've done that with other people that I didn't feel comfortable with, or um either they weren't seasoned as an actor enough to like, that they didn't have experience, or like you didn't have that talk beforehand, like, hey, what are you comfortable with? What are you comfortable with? Like, because it's still your body and still like a sensitive, you know, a vulnerable space to be in together. But
Yeah, because you're working together, you're being vulnerable with each other, and you're sort of collaborating to come up with the sort of best way to depict a scene where you're both comfortable.
right. And like I feel like we were kind of limited because of my outfit. Because there was moments where Tom's like, like, you know, I was like moving and my outfit was like, what's up? And I was like, no, like I can't have that happen. So we were a little bit more limited with like how I was moving, and where the camera was. We were trying to keep that in mind. But like I'm just thankful that it was with Zach because he made me feel super comfortable. Like I didn't feel any, you know, I didn't feel like uncomfortable or not safe. Like constantly they like Tom would say cut and he's like, are you good? Like what's going on? Like, can I do something different? And it's nice when you know that the person cares about like your mental state and, you know, you as a person physically. So it really wasn't awkward. I've done other times where it was awkward. And that sucks because you're like, this is odd. And like, you know, you're physically there in real life, so it's like this is like actually happening to me. It's like awkward. I don't know how to explain it.
Is there also an element of like, I don't know how long you guys were shooting like that specific scene, but I've heard people say like you're shooting so quick that you don't even necessarily like think about, you know, oh, this is awkward at the moment. You sort of
Right.
just like plowing through, you know?
Right, like pretty much like, all right, I'm the character, this is my boyfriend, like how would I act, like because I'm not me anymore in a sense. Like I'm still gonna respect myself and make sure I'm safe, but like I'm like I slip back into myself and like Kelly comes through. And I think we shot that for what, like, was it like a half an hour? Was it more than that? I honestly blacked out because I was
Probably
just
about it was probably like a maybe a half hour just for that scene. But
yeah.
one thing I try to do is, even when in the auditioning, I try to talk to them and I let them know like there's going to be a a kissing scene, sexual scene, whether it's just a kiss or whatever. I want to make sure that they're comfortable with it because I know they have boyfriend, girlfriends, fiancés, married, whatever. So that's the first thing you want to make sure that the actors are comfortable doing it, and then making sure they're comfortable with the other person. I know she knew Zach, um, and we were all like really, we were friends and stuff like that. So just talking to them before and saying like, hey, you go off, decide what you want to do. I'm cool with that. It was meant to be like in a playful way, like giggly and stuff like that. So you work it out the way you like, whatever you feel comfortable with, and then let me know what you want to do. So that's pretty much how I directed them on that, and they were good with it, and both of them are very professional. To me, I think out of everybody on the set, they were the most believable couple. They were definitely like they had a really good chemistry together, and it was definitely like one of my favorite scenes to shoot. So, but
I was gonna say, Rachel, it's funny that you mentioned like, you're getting into the character and you sort of like black out getting into the character, because I remember when I took acting classes in like high school, I would tell people, yeah, I kind of just blacked out and got into the character, and I
Yeah.
like don't really remember even acting.
Yeah.
I thought I was crazy when I would tell people that, but apparently I'm not the only one.
Yeah, no, I mean, there have been times where I'm acting and I'm very aware, to the point where I'm like, what am I doing with my hands? How's my body posture? And you don't really want to be in that headspace because I feel like then you're not really authentically living as the character. But I'm a human, so sometimes my brain is just more ADD than normal. But my acting coach always says, like, if you're feeling it and you kind of lose yourself, that's when you know you're there. So yeah, sometimes that happens. And like, I think one time on set, I forget what film it was because we've done so many, it might have been Hunting for Justice, but Tom was like, all right, do that again. And I'm like, do what? Because I was just like, I don't know, I just kind of like did it and I didn't think about Rachel, I just thought about like the character. Because like obviously there's parts of yourself that filter through the character, but you're like not you anymore. Like each character I get to portray, there's a part of you in every character, even like the Dahmer characters or like the killer characters. Like you still have to try and find their humanity and why they were led to this, and how you can relate to it and make them not just like this evil being, but Yeah, most of the time I do black out. So you're probably just feeling it, which is good.
I was going to ask Tom, since we're talking about acting, what was it like directing the great Lloyd Kaufman of Troma? Because
Oh,
you know, I have to say, I've interviewed Lloyd before, and I always thought Lloyd like played up his sort of Tromaville personality, but there's not as much of a difference, I think,
no,
between Lloyd Kaufman and Tromaville Lloyd
uh,
Kaufman.
that, that's definitely Lloyd. He was such a pleasure to be with, like, and hang out with on set. And I know like a lot of people were excited about him coming on set. It was weird how he like
How did he get involved in the movie?
well, at first Danny Roebuck was supposed to be the mayor.
Oh,
Um,
really? That? Yeah. Wow.
yeah, Danny Roebuck agreed to be on the project. I met with him, um, and we had the issue with Danny Roebuck. We had one day to shoot with. He was only going to be in town for that one day, and our schedule got moved ahead like a whole month, because of like we lost a crew, and we had to find a whole crew and stuff like that. So when I contacted Danny, I said, "Hey, we have to push it ahead," and he was like, "I'm not going to be in town. I'm going to be shooting, a project," which ended up being the Munsters. Um, so it was like, okay, so we had to recast, and then we just started like looking in the different people. There was uh, Felissa Rose was on board at one time for that.
Oh, Sleepaway Camp. Yeah, yeah.
She was on board, and then with scheduling that didn't work out, and then one of our actors, she played the news reporter, Courtney, at the end, the one who's actually interviewing, like doing the review on interview with Lloyd, and he's like cursing out. um she's actually really good friends with him. I believe that's his goddaughter. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that that's the, like, they're really close with each other. um so she was like, I can talk to Lloyd for you, and we're like, okay, cool. And then she put us in contact with his assistant, and we worked that all out. It was pretty easy, actually. It was like, all right, this the money, how we're going to work it all out. Worked out his transportation. We shot like an hour and away from where he lived, so it was pretty easy to get him there. And he came on, and he was fun. He was and he it was so crazy because he had a lot of dialogue, and it wasn't like he had like a small cameo. Like, he had a big role in the film.
Yeah, he had a
Um,
big role, but I'm assuming you didn't have that many days with him compared to the
no,
other
we had
days
one
you were
day,
shooting.
just
Okay.
one day. Um, so like we had like basically one day just for him, and then when we were working with him, it was just like he just got the script maybe like a week before. So like I said, he came in and you know kind of knocked it out of the park. Like, knew his dialogue. We he's very funny. Like, so we have a lot of bloopers with him. And
You should release that.
when
Well,
we
you do have the blooper, the sort of after credits blooper with him, which I
yeah
enjoyed.
yeah that
Uh,
was all him.
yeah, I was going to say, I was talking recently to Justin Seaman and Zane Hirschberger from the movie The Barn and its sequel, The Barn Part 2. And they were saying one thing with Lloyd is that he can really get into a role, but sometimes he gets too much into the sort of Lloyd from Tromaville role, and you have to like pull him back a little bit. Did you sort of have to do that at all, or no?
No, like I said,
You
I
just
mean,
let him roll. Yeah.
he came in, and I told him what I was looking for. I wanted him to kind of be the antagonist of the film. Like, I wanted him to be the hated person of the film, and he did that, but he did it in such like in a different way that even what I was like expecting, like when we brought Danny Roebuck in, he would have brought like a much more serious character, like a big asshole to that role. And when Lloyd did it, he did the same thing, but he was more comedic about it.
Yeah,
Um,
Lloyd does it his own way.
yeah, so
It's one of a kind.
yeah, but he didn't like go into that whole like trauma like Lloyd and stuff like that. Is um what you see is like, how he cut it together was like that was him. So he took it serious, and he knew he knew what I wanted. And I think he did a really good job doing it.
I wanted to ask you, so there's quite a few kills in the film. Do you have a favorite kill? And maybe if you could, my listeners are always interested in how the effects work. So is there a favorite kill? And maybe you could go through how that kill worked and how you made the magic happen.
Definitely. I know this is everybody's favorite kill is Christina's kill. The girl who plays Ginger. Um, she gets the pickaxe in the mouth, and then like the miner's trying to pull it out, and he can't, so he just starts like cranking on it, and it starts turning and like knocking out all of her teeth. That was my favorite kill. Like even when I was writing it, I knew that was the one that okay, we're gonna try to figure this out. So as, when you're on set, like not everything goes right, with your special effects, and that was something that like it took me and my partner Darren, like me and him talked about it quite a bit. Like, hey, how can we get this down and make the pickaxe spin in her mouth and knock out all her teeth, but like making her safe while we're doing it, and like showing a real person, not a dummy. So we created this gag that like went inside her mouth under the prosthetic, and which made the pickaxe spin, like pretty easily. And the hardest part was making it like safe for her without like hurting her teeth, and because it was a big piece that went in there. Um, but that was my favorite part, like my favorite kill. Um, and I think that's pretty much everybody's favorite kill. As far as I know, everybody kept telling me like they loved that one.
How long did it take to film that specific kill?
About 2 hours. That
What
whole
were like some of the obstacles maybe you faced while filming it?
people, people would like I remember one girl got out of a car, ran over, and was like, "What's going on here? Is she okay?" Because it was crazy. And then I know everybody like had their phones out, like wanting to see that, like wanting to film that. Um, and it wasn't like I said, it wasn't hard. It was just like, we had to film it with her going onto the pickaxe and then cutting, stopping for a little bit, going to apply the prosthetics, and then setting up the lighting for the effect, and then coming back out like an hour later and shooting the scene with it in her mouth. So altogether, I think
Yeah,
it
I was
like
assuming that could be uncomfortable for her in some ways too, right? Like you have to be very careful with it.
yeah, no, we made sure that like she was very comfortable. That's like one thing that for like with me anyway, I always want the actors to be comfortable, whether it's doing effects or a kissing scene, sex scene, anything like that. It's because if they're not comfortable, you're gonna see it in their performance, and he's like these are like not just actors, they're my friends, and I care about how they feel on set. So, and I'm very protective over the girls. um, Whenever like there's issues, I always tell them make sure you tell me so we can stop that shit really quick. Um, so yeah, but she was good. She was a lot of fun to do it. She was very up for it. She was so excited about that because she knew like that was going to be like the big kill of the film.
So I want to talk more about the film, but I actually had a question for Rachel, just with regards to getting acting work and having a resume and whatnot. I've had certain actresses tell me that, it's a whole different ballgame now and that you're expected to sort of have a social media presence, TikTok, things like that. What is it like being an actress today? And like, do you need to have a social media presence? How do you sort of pitch yourself when you're going in for an audition or trying to get a role? What goes into being an actress today?
I guess I feel like it's always been demanding, but I feel like with the rise of social media and even COVID, it kind of made it there's like benefits that we didn't have in the past, and kind of so auditions it used to be in person. I haven't been to an in-person audition since COVID. Everything is self-tape at home, which is cool because you can take more time and submit it when you want. I don't have a big house or like a studio, so that kind of sucks because some people you see their self-tapes and you're like, whoa, that looks like a production. Um, but it's nice to not have to drive like 2 hours to do 5 minutes of something and then drive home. As far as social media, um, I don't know if it's extremely like you have to have it or you're not going to make it kind of thing, but it definitely helps to promote yourself, which I'm bad at. But it helps to like promote yourself because then other people in the industry will see what you're in. They'll like click on it, see what's up, see who you know, see like my IMDb is pretty much my resume now. When you're starting off as an actor, I've been doing this for like 11 years, but when you start off, I would have a resume, but like usually when I'm submitting, it's my demo reel, my headshot, my audition, and then like I'll like add my IMDb because then they can see everything I've been on. They can see who I worked with, what the director was, what the budget was, all that fun stuff. But yeah, social media is kind of like a pain in the ass. I'm trying to love it and not hate it because I don't want to be resentful of it. But I do remember going in for I don't know if it would be an interview or what to get an agent, and they asked me how many followers I had on Instagram, and that was like 5 years ago. So I can't even imagine what it's like now. Like I have a
Yeah,
TikTok.
I was going to say, not to interrupt you, but
Oh, you're
I
fine.
was going to say, I'm starting to see now that there's people that aren't even known for acting, but they're known for their TikTok or their Instagram.
Yeah.
And, small studios like Full Moon Studios, who do a lot of these genre films, are hiring like the TikTok personalities to be in
Right.
their films. And
So
it seems like now that there's like a new brand of actor and actress that they don't start out as an actor and actress, they start out as a TikTok personality. Yeah.
right, which, that's great for them. That's fantastic. Good. I mean, kudos. I hope I'm not quoting this wrong, but I think it was Game of Thrones, the girl that plays Sansa. I think. I hope this isn't wrong. Someone's probably watching like, no, but I think it was the really pretty redhead Sansa. She was up against another actress and both phenomenal actresses, but I think Sansa had a bigger following on social media, which, as a marketing thing with like any production, you want to pick the person. If they're both good, I feel like they're going to pick the person with more followers just because it'll help bring more attention to the project. I pretty much I think that's it. So like with TikTokers, I think if that's what you want to call them, like with the performances on social media, them getting cast, I feel like it's definitely like, oh, they have a lot of followers, a lot of people are interested in them, that'll carry over to our film, and they're probably good at what they do. But I feel like old fashioned acting is kind of like being replaced by like social media acting, if that makes
Because
sense.
I gotta say something too, like how I feel about that is I don't even like agree with that. Like because you mean to tell me you're gonna take somebody with a bigger following, they're not even an actor because they have a like, they're a pretty girl on social media and they're getting like, 1 million followers or 1 million views, and they're gonna get taken over somebody who's a real actor who can actually act. Like that to me is just crazy. But I mean, I've seen it happen. I worked on a film set where um I was pretty close with the directing and the producing, like going over like a lot of stuff, and they were like, "Oh, we're gonna cast this person because they have a bunch more followers," and it's like, over that person, like, and this person's not even an actor, and they're like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, don't worry, she got like they got a lot more followers." I was like, "Okay."
It definitely sucks because like I don't know about any other actresses or actors, but I try and stand by my moral compass, if you will. So, a lot of things I could be doing on social media to like gain those followers, I'm like, I don't want to be like doing that.
Well, that's the other thing with the social media stuff. I don't know how some people like Lauren Rivera, who's in the Terrifier 2 movie, I don't know how they do all this social media stuff because you have a lot of creeps and assholes and trolls out there that will just go on social media to harass actors and actresses. And
Yeah.
it's like, it's just such I think it's daunting to have to do social media. I mean, doing this show, I record 3 to 4 shows a week, and then I also have to do my social media stuff. And it's like it can be really daunting, especially when you're dealing with like total strangers that are just out to try to tear you down.
Yeah, it's definitely not great. I mean, Lauren's like a tough chick, so I don't even worry about her. Like she's like, what'd you
She's
just
a badass.
Yeah, so like she's fine, but I mean, I'm sure there's comments where she's like, "Why?" But she's good. But like, yeah, when social media started coming out, oh my gosh, I sound like I feel old saying this. I think it was like 2011 Instagram came out. I could be wrong, but that's when I was aware of it, and it's just so different now than it used to be, and the amount of like you kind of have to be like firm in where you stand. Like, I've done some films and every film I do, I'll watch myself and be like, okay, there was believable, there really wasn't, like, and I learn and I watch it like 5 times to be like, all right, what do I need to work on for the next time? And like sometimes people will message you, it's either like creepy things, like, oh, it was really hot watching you get tortured. And I was like, what? Or like other things like you suck or like you're amazing. And I kind of just try and like hear it and let it go out because social media is kind of like opinions, like
Yeah.
everyone has one, everyone is entitled to their opinion, but don't take it to heart. Because when I was like young, I used to take that stuff to heart, like big time. And I was like, oh my gosh. And, sometimes still I'm like, wow, like that kind of sucked because they're talking about me. But then you just have to be like, listen, like, you're not going to please everyone. The creeps thing, yeah, that just is that you just delete before you even read it kind of thing. I'm obviously not at a point yet where I have like thousands of followers and like all these people are messaging me, but I don't know what's going to happen when that occurs. I might just turn my messages off because
You're gaining. I wanted to say too, you are gaining a bit of a profile. I know that you're in that movie Poser that came out on Showtime, right?
yeah, that was cool. Yeah, that definitely helped. And like I'm thankful for the following I have. Oh my goodness, but I don't know if I have the struggles that like Lauren has with like people harassing her. Do you know what I'm saying? Like different scales, but yeah, social media sucks. One of my other jobs besides acting is social media management for different clients and all different kinds of clients. And social media is just so daunting, like you said, like to the point where it's like I wish I could just be cast because I'm good, not also because I have like so and so followers. So
There
yeah,
were just a few more things I wanted to cover with both of you, if we can go a little bit longer.
I
Yeah.
don't care. Yeah.
So, Tom, something I wanted to ask you about was, you have these scenes that are filmed in the mine, especially in the third act. What goes into setting those scenes up? Like, do you have to get permits, and how do you get access to film in the mines and whatnot?
It's so weird. That was actually, I thought when we first started location, like we knew we wanted to shoot in a mine and we had a good amount of them near us. We were like, all right, well, this is going to be a hard location to get. And that ended up being like the easiest location to get. It was basically like a 15-minute phone call and we were booked in. It was funny, but, it was just basically like searching around different mines and, scouting them and seeing like which ones we liked and which one would have worked. And we found that one. It was called the Pioneer Mine in Ashland, PA, which was like an hour away from us, well, from me. Um, and we went up there, we scouted it, we talked to them, we went inside. It was really cool. The crazy thing was the first time we went there, it was dry. Um, Now fast forward months later, when we go in there to shoot, my partner Roland Keller, he choreographed like this whole fight scene and it was supposed to go on the ground. And when we get there, it was completely wet. It was like a downpour in there, certain spots. It was so bad. And it was like, oh wow. So we had to like actually set up a whole like fight. It kind of like we had to change like the shots where we were gonna shoot certain things. Um that was a problem. And it was even worse the second time we went back in there because it rained for like 4 straight days. And then it was like when we get in there, it was like waterfalls. Um, so that was a problem. Lighting it was pretty difficult. Like we weren't allowed to bring anything that had to be plugged in, so we had to like get battery operated lights. Um, I know like they kept dripping on the camera. My camera operator was like flipping out. um,
How do
but
you deal with that when something bad happens that you're not expecting on set? What's the best way to get around that?
just trying to figure out like find a location where it's a little bit more drier than others. Going like I said, we went in there and did a whole like tour of the mine a couple months before we shot in there, so we knew how the lighting was. We knew what kind of lights we wanted to bring in, but we didn't really have to do much to the lighting. It was lit that way, when we went in. We knew where the dark spots were that we wanted to shoot the dark spots. Um, and where we did set up certain lights, I think it worked really well, you know. So but now the biggest difficulty was definitely how wet it was. It was cold. I think the first time we went there, it was like 90 degrees, 85, 90 degrees. It was in summer. Like I think we went, I think our first day of shooting was like August something. And it was hot. Then when you walk up to the doors and open up the doors, it's like 40 degrees. It was cold and it's like wet and it's damp. So I remember like going in there, I was like, oh, this is not gonna be fun. But here's a crazy thing too, and this is a weird funny thing. When Rachel was brought into the mine, that scene where they're kind of like in bed and she's got lingerie on, and then it cuts and she's wearing clothes. Well, the reason that we shot that scene is because when we went to the mine, we knew how cold it was, and there was no way that we can let Rachel go in there with lingerie.
Thank you.
That's how it was supposed to be.
And then
And,
she really died. No.
Yeah, but that's how it was supposed to be. She was supposed to get put in there and like hung up like with the nails in her hand in lingerie. And we're like, no, we can't do that. So we kind of like shot an extra scene with her like being clothed and stuff like that.
I didn't even really think about that or notice that while I was watching it, but you're right.
Good.
Yeah, it's like one of them off cuts. It was like, oh, I hope we can get away with it,
And like while we were filming it, I was like, oh man, I should really just commit and like just go in the mine with my lingerie. I can do this. And then we got there and we were in there for like 3 hours and my feet were like in my socks and it was like rocky and wet and muddy. And I was just sitting there like, it's okay that I didn't. Like I like part of me wants to have, but I was like, I got sick just because my feet were wet for so long. Like, and like, you're covered in blood and stuff and it's cold and so I wish I was a badass and could have committed to that, but I probably would have died. So
yeah, that was the difficult part of it.
So I also like to ask whenever I have anyone on that's from the filmmaking world, and I think you could speak to this too, Rachel. I've read about this idea of happy accidents that happen on set. So David Lynch will say, I had a happy accident on set where something just happened that I caught on film, and then I decided I can include this. Has that ever happened when you're filming a movie, Tom? And maybe that also happens with you, Rachel, where you say a line very impromptu and it just works.
Mhm.
Yeah, I know like certain things that like we shot as a here's a good one. There's a funny one. The scene with the sound guy Brandon comes in with the red suit and he's like doing a little dance and he walks over and he like asks the girl to dance and then when she's like okay and he's like oh not you and talks to the guy. That was all meant to be a joke. It was playing a joke on the actor that was like the actor Brian that was there, and it was so funny and it was good. And we're like, oh, we're just gonna keep that in there. The scene where like Roland's like, walking by the guy who plays Murphy with the beard. He comes walking by the camera. He's got the balloons, and like he tripped and the balloons went all up in the air. Like that wasn't meant to be, but it was kind of funny to me. So I was like, oh, we're gonna keep it in there. Little stuff like that. A lot of stuff with the minor, like there was one thing too is when I would direct Chuck the miner for certain things, but I let him do his thing because I knew he knew that character much more. He wanted to bring to that character like much more than what I could ask for. He's very big on that cosplay, so it wasn't like much direction to him. It's like, all right, here you're gonna go this way, you're gonna go that way, and that kind of deal. But I know there was a lot of stuff that what he was doing, I was like, I really liked it. We kept it in. A lot of people, not a lot of people, but some people were like, oh, the mine scene was a little too long. It was like, because I liked so much of the stuff that we shot in there, we kept it in there. And a lot of that stuff was like kind of like, little accidents that happened that it was like, oh, we weren't supposed to do that, but it's cool that he did it,
Did you ever have any moments, Rachel, where, I mean, with this film or other films where maybe you improvised a line or you had to respond to another actor improvising and it just worked, the chemistry worked and everything worked out right?
Yeah, for sure. I can't think of anything specifically off the top of my head at the moment, but definitely times where I improved or had like a button kind of like at the end of something where just like to add that like little like I'm trying to explain what a button is. Just like little added text or dialogue that like kind of just wasn't written, but it lends itself. I'm trying to think if there's any like accidents that happened on Valentine Bluffs that we kept during my scene. My dress knot, well, I don't know if this is relatable, but when I was getting undressed during the lingerie scene, my skirt would not unzipper like 3 times. Do you remember that? I was like, what is going
It's
on?
on the bloopers.
Yeah, God's probably like, stop right now. And I'm like, no, like this is a scene. He's like, no, stop. So that kind of added to like more giggly, more playful like banter between me and Zach, because I was definitely like, this sucks. Like it was literally like 3 takes in a row. And I was like, okay, what's happening? Just unzip it now and I'll pretend to unzip it. Like it was so that might, I think that was the only thing that happened on this set specifically that kind of helped, but
Yeah, and I'm pretty big with like letting the actors do stuff that they want to do too. Like they like we'll have conversations in pre-production and they know what I want. And then when they come on set, like letting them do their thing.
Sort of like I've always been a big fan of like Abel Ferrara. That's why I went to film school. But I've always liked how Ferrara sort of lets his actors sort of take on the role and push it in the direction they want. Because I think a different actor, two different actors could read, say, Rachel's role completely differently, right? So you can have a completely different interpretation of the character depending on who the actor is. So I like that you sort of take that approach of allowing the actors and the actresses to sort of define the role on their own terms in some ways.
Yeah, like they pretty much know what I want before they get there. And then like sometimes we'll have conversations on set like before they, we call action or whatever. But like with Rachel, I know like I worked with her quite a few times. I know that she's going to deliver an A game. It's like something I'm really happy with.
oh.
So yeah, I let them do their thing.
So I don't know if you can talk about this, but every time I have an independent filmmaker on, I always like to ask, how much does it cost to make a film like Valentine Bluffs? And also, what's the shooting schedule like? Is it hectic? Can you talk about those things if you're comfortable with it?
Yeah. So we had an Indiegogo campaign. We raised on the campaign, I believe it was like close to 51,000. Now you don't get all that money. Like that's the biggest thing where like, oh man, you got a $50,000 budget. No. We get like maybe between 50 to 55% of that. You got to pay the fees, Indiegogo, you have to pay them. You have to pay a processing fee for every perk that's bought. You got to pay for all the perks, and then shipping and handling. So you don't get all that money. I remember like when we first started doing, like none of us knew how to do a campaign. It was all like, all right, how do we do this? And it took like a year to set it all up. Did it, and I was nervous about it. I think we were all nervous about like doing it, and it's a matter of like, because I was on projects where they had campaigns and they weren't successful.
Yeah, I was going to say, I recently interviewed on this show the very controversial filmmaker Uwe Boll, and he was like, I hate Indiegogo campaigns. They never work for me, So I know people that have had success with it. On one hand, people like Justin Seaman and Zane Hirschberger from the 2 Barn movies. And then I've known people that haven't had success with it. So it's interesting to hear that you were nervous about it, because I know a lot of people that just have mixed feelings on Indiegogo campaigns.
Yeah, it's definitely a hit and miss. Like, I mean, the 2 that I worked, well, I didn't work on, they weren't my films, but I was doing special effects for them. The one was a really good campaign, an original idea. I thought it was going to work, and it bombed. It didn't do well at all. And the one that I thought was going to be bad was okay. It wasn't as successful, like, but they raised the funds that they were trying to raise. I guess that's successful, but it wasn't like a large amount. It was like a couple $1,000s. Ours, we knew we had to raise at least 25,000 to make the film that I wanted to, and we still didn't make the film that I wanted to. I always tell people if we would have had a couple, more money and like 5 more days of shooting, we would have made the film that I wanted, had all the shots that I wanted. The shooting schedule was really crazy. It was set for 9 days. And it's like we were shooting so like, a lot of moving locations and like, not so close together. So it was like that was difficult.
Yeah, I was gonna say 9 days. That's sort of like the Roger Corman style shooting
It was,
schedule, where it's like,
you know,
yeah, we only got 6 to 9 days to shoot this. Yeah,
there's a reason why you see a lot of like steady shots, um, because we didn't have time to do like all these like setups and stuff like that. And there were some takes where it was like, okay, we're good, that was okay, let's move on to the next one. So it's like very guerrilla style filmmaking. It was crazy. I know the courthouse, when we got there, there was they were saying that we weren't allowed to be there, and and I remember like Lloyd Kaufman was just like, "Oh, we're gonna go there, shoot it, and we'll get out real quick." you know, I mean, we're allowed to be outside there, but we weren't allowed to go like on the steps or anything like that. So it was like, all right, let's just go and shoot it and get out really quick before anybody bothers us. So we shot that. I think we shot that whole entire thing in like an hour. Got there, set the camera up, had him come out, say like what he had to do, and then leave, get out of there. It was just really quick, and we had some days like that, and then we had a day where uh Christy, Christy from Nightmare Toys, her scene with Corey in the house, that was completely changed that whole day. Like when we got to the location, it was the first time we seen that house. It was like, oh wow, we have a big house, let's use it. Their scene was, they went from being a 6-hour schedule to, I think we shot that in like 14 hours, just because we wanted to change a couple of things. So yeah, it was crazy. Definitely a crazy shooting schedule, and the issues that we had with it. There was a lot of issues with it, and I give a lot of credit to Liz, our AD. She was amazing. It was really the first time I worked with an AD, and and I know how important it is to have them on set. And I think if we didn't have her on set, we would not have finished that film.
yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned having to do the guerrilla filmmaking style thing, where it's like, okay, we can't be by the courthouse. We'll just shoot this real quick. I mean, even like really big name directors that we know very well today, like Peter Bogdanovich, the late Peter Bogdanovich, when he was filming the movie Targets, he had to film a scene where the shooter was shooting people on I think it was like the highway, and he apparently had trouble filming it because he didn't have like the proper permits. And Roger Corman just said, film it anyways, just get it done quickly. So that kind of stuff really happens.
Oh yeah.
What is it like working on that sort of hectic schedule, Rachel? Is there like a stress factor to any of that, or? And also, Tom, if you want to answer.
For me, if I have to, I think the only time that I ever felt like stressed or panic was like I have to be either sobbing or in a type of a mental like emotional hystericalness words like I have to be like over the top, like hysterical or crying or emotional, and like we're on a time crunch. And let's say like some days I can cry and it's no big deal, and other days I'm like, all right, like where is it, like I want real tears, like what's going on. So that's the only time with this set, and sometimes on other sets, where they're like, all right, we have like this amount of time to shoot this, and they're like waiting for me to cry, and I'm like, why is this not computing in my brain right now? Like I'm trying, I feel it, I feel like I'm there, but physically you can't see me crying. And I think that's the only time where I feel rushed or like panicked, because I want to serve the material well. But when there's a time crunch, I don't have time to like go for like a half an hour to like get to where I need to be. Sometimes I'll like, while I'm driving to set, or like the night before or the whole day, I'll try and just stay in that mind space so that when it's time to go, I can bring it. But kind of like our second day of shooting, when we were on schedule and then all of a sudden we were behind, I kind of felt like, oh no, like I really have to get there. So that's it for me. It's much more difficult on your side, Tom, because you're like making the movie.
It's definitely stressful. It's again, it's more like you not everything goes as planned. You can have, we had a year of production meetings, pre-production meetings, and you think you're ready, and then when you get on set, not everything goes as planned. So you're always like stressed out about like certain things. And we didn't have a big crew. Like you see a lot of these like fan films, they talk about they had like 20-30 people crew. We literally had probably 5 main people every day. And then we would have like, PA here and there. But that was it. And
That's
there's
incredible too, because a lot of fan films now, in order to get that professional look and get everything done, a lot of them are like they're not feature length, they're short films. Like that one I mentioned, the Wes Craven's New Nightmare sequel that is being made, the sort of fan sequel. I think that's going to only be a short film. Like whereas you're doing, a feature length, fan film.
Yeah, and like I said, this is how crazy some of the scheduling was. The day we were shooting Rachel's scene with Zach, her in the photos, like her death scene. Well, Zach's death scene, and then her getting chased by the miner. We were building that set that day, and then we were building her office. Where she makes like she was just on the phone with her boyfriend. That was being built like while we were shooting that scene. It's like, and we were all in this like studio. The whole Miners Museum was built in my studio, so we were literally building that. And I remember like shooting a scene, going over to talk to Roland, and I'm like, "Hey, is the set ready?" And he's like, "Nope, but it'll be ready when you get on set." It's like, okay. I was like, "How's it look?" "Oh no, you'll see it when you get there." So it was like that. So it was tough. It was a tough schedule, and but I'm glad it was like that. It was like a huge learning experience for all of us.
Hey, Rachel, I was going to ask, since you mentioned the whole, having to get into the mindset of a character that is in a sort of hysterical moment where they're crying or they're very, very, emotionally distraught. I think a lot of people, they look at like horror movies and even comedies and say, oh, those are kind of like lowbrow genres. It doesn't take much effort to do those. But I actually think it takes a lot of like very good timing on the part of the actor to capture, terror or emotional distress, or even comic timing if you're doing comedy. So how do you get into this sort of emotional state? Like if you have to be distressed in a scene or you have to cry in a scene, how do you get into that headspace? Because I think it's harder than people realize.
Yeah, it was harder than I realized when I first started doing horror. I was like, oh, I'll just like be upset and I'll feel the emotion. I'll get there as the character, and then you get there and you're like, oh, like it's kind of like scary for me. Maybe I'm super sensitive, but sometimes it takes me a couple hours to shake the feeling. Sometimes it takes me like a week. One film me and Tom did together a while ago took me like months kind of to get over what happened on set emotionally. I will basically, when I have the script, I will kind of make a playlist for myself with music. Music touches me so much. I don't know if that makes me weird, but like music can really get me into different emotions. So I'll have a playlist for like each scene, and what is needed from me for the scene. If it's playful, blah, blah, blah. If it's energetic, if it's happy, if it's sad. Mostly comedy is, or mostly horror is sad or trauma. So I honestly also, this is hard because I've never had this before, but I will genuinely sit in an experience for like days or weeks that I'm supposed to be experiencing in the film. And I'll just sit in it and be like, all right, like, what if this actually happened to me? And then I visualize it happening to me and how I would react to it. And then I just stick with that until I can feel the level I need to be at. This might sound weird, but I get to where I need to be emotionally, then I can go back to being like me, Rachel. And then if I can like match that energy again, when I need to, I know I'm like ready and I'm there, because you might be waiting on set for like hours and then they need you need to be able to like bring it. So really music helps me, and just envisioning that happening to me. If I really can't get there, I will literally think of like my dogs dying, or like what that's going to be like when they do pass, like my grandma passing, or like emotional things that have happened to me during my life that I can like pull from those experiences. But yeah, the timing is definitely, I think with comedy the timing is a little bit more prevalent than with I mean, it's all timing, but comedy, it's kind of like, it's kind of like a music, like it's kind of like a rhythm. Like if you don't get it, you can miss a joke. Whereas horror is kind of like, you can like take your time a little bit more with getting there. But yeah, music is number one for me.
Are you worried? Just out of curiosity, are you worried where acting is heading as a profession now? Like, I was reading about the whole thing with Keanu Reeves, I guess, saying, I don't want like post production like AI used in my movies.
Yeah.
And now it's like you don't really need to like, let's say an actor can't get up some tears when they need to cry in a scene. You can sort of just AI generate it. Do you think that's like a good or a bad thing for acting in film?
Um,
We
that's
don't
a
have that, so you don't have to worry about that with us.
that's a good question. Yeah, I know that on sets, sometimes on professional sets, like if someone can't cry, there's like glycerin sticks, or I think that's what they're called. There's always something to help you get there. Always something to help portray the story. Even if you can't get there emotionally, you're like still showing up for the job and like getting the work done, even if it's not like you think it's top quality. But yeah, it kind of freaks me out. I don't know if it's like bad because it brings a new type of experience to viewers and a new way of storytelling. So I'm always down for like new things and like interesting things, but it definitely is like, all right, like as an actress, I think the whole point is to feel something and to be able to share the voice of the character that they wouldn't be able to speak without you. And I don't know, I've watched films where I connect with the actor or the character and what they're going through, what they're feeling, watching how they process something, and then it's helped me learn how to process things and get through certain things. So I definitely think it kind of robs the story of that like human like emotion and like the realness of your soul struggling and of you actually going through something. Not that like AI wouldn't look great and look like, oh, that person's crying, but it's not like a real human person. So it's like almost like taking away the power that the character would have in like a human aspect. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I think it's interesting, and maybe you can comment on this too, Tom. I think we're in this moment that's very unusual because, in some ways, I think that these sort of, and I don't have a problem with these movies existing. I like a good superhero movie, but with all these Marvel movies and like The Mandalorian, it's almost like the actor has been replaced by, the science fiction character Luke Skywalker. We don't even think about the actors as much anymore as we think of the characters, the superheroes, the supervillains, and I kind of think that's a sad thing. I think it's sad that so many movies are just focused on special effects and less on character and story. What's interesting is I'm seeing more and more of these independent horror movies, which, in the 80s, the horror movies were all about, bloods, boobs, and beasts, right? But now I'm seeing these indie horror movies like Valentine Bluffs or Terrifier 2 that are very heavy on character development and story. It's kind of interesting. I think now we're seeing more indie horror that is giving us more character development and more story than a lot of like mainstream big budget Hollywood movies. Do you want to comment on that, Tom? Was it important to you to have a lot of character development and story development in this?
Yeah, I'm pretty big on that. Like I wanted to tell a story, like because this one was actually much harder than because you're not doing like you're not creating anything from the original characters. You're creating characters that were already there for you. You're just putting it like 40 years later, or you're creating new characters into that storyline from 81. So yeah, it's definitely I'm very big into character development, and because I think that's what makes a good movie. Like I don't like I've worked on films where it's just gore, it doesn't make it a good movie. It's just like you can show off your special effects like that. But other than that, I think it's more like, trying to entertain the audience. And to do that, like me personally, when I watch a movie, if I don't feel for the character, like especially in a horror film, like I don't give a shit if they live or die. Like that's not a good character for me.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have some level of investment in the
Yeah.
characters.
So
I think people miss that about the early slasher movies. Even a movie like Nightmare on Elm Street. You kind of or John Carpenter's Halloween. I didn't really hate any of the characters. You can invest a little bit in each of them, right? And I think some people that make horror movies today forget that. You do need that character investment.
yeah, I just think, like I said, if it's not there, then people don't care if they live or die. Then You walk into a movie and you're like, that was okay. I'd rather them say like I didn't like that. You know, like I said, I don't care. It's just like, all right, it's just, an okay movie. If you didn't get that feeling like, I really like that, or I didn't like it, or I wanted to see that person die, or I wish he didn't die. Like you said, you didn't want to see Rachel's character die. Was that a good thing or a bad thing that we did? I don't know. But I hope people were talking about it a year from now. You know, um, to me, I don't know if this has anything to do with that, but my favorite show of all time is The Sopranos. And you watch that. I remember watching it when it first came out, and the last episode where it just went black, and you don't know if he lived or died. And now you got like so many years later that they're still talking about that. Like that's to me it's an art film. That's like a really good decision that director made. Back then, I was like, oh my god, it was the worst ending ever. Like I didn't see like this guy live or die. But now, like when you're more into film and stuff like that, and you're like, okay, that was an amazing ending the way he ended it. So yeah, I definitely think you need character development. You want to feel for these characters. You want to have a good story. I think I just seen so many bad horror movies that are like it didn't even make any sense. So yeah, I definitely think the storytelling and the characters are important.
Rachel, do you want to add to that at all, or?
Yeah, I think it's also important on an acting scale. I think it's very important, obviously. I've been on a lot of films where there's not really much of a character breakdown, and as much as it is my job to bring the character, it helps to know their background, why they come to where they are in the film, why they think the way they do, why they react the way they do. And just on a storytelling scale, I think it's important just so you can relate with them, and it brings more like oomph to the story when like traumatic things happen. So yeah, I think I like things more when there's a storyline than just like getting killed or nudity. Or I think if it works, good, but it doesn't have to be like forced. I think character development's very important. Yeah.
So one thing I wanted to ask you, Tom, before we wrap up here is, you do special effects and practical effects work. I was talking to Gary J. Tunnicliffe a few years ago, who does the makeup effects for a lot of the Hellraiser movies. And he said to me that, the landscape is changing now where, there's less and less practical effects and more, CGI-based effects. So I feel like people like yourself and also Joe Castro, whose work I'm very big on, are sort of keeping practical effects alive. What do you think the value of practical effects are in this sort of age of computer-generated imagery?
You could definitely tell. You can definitely tell the difference, and practical is much more real. It's much more realistic than you're gonna. I've seen good stuff with CG, but I've seen really bad things with it, and it's like, I don't know. I don't know what's cheaper, or what. I know like some of the stuff that I've done can get really expensive from for the producers if they want to see certain things, and it takes a lot of time to make it and a lot of materials, and it can get really expensive. Where you can bring someone in post and do it CG, it's a little bit cheaper. Maybe that's why they do it. As far as like the look of it, I always think practical looks better. And back in the 80s, like that's the genre of the films that I grew up watching that I love. I still watch them to this day. I would choose that over anything now. And it was all practical, so it just looks better to me.
Where'd you first learn to do sort of special effects and makeup effects?
I went to Tom Savini Special Effects School.
Okay, I thought you were going to say that because I think you're from like Philly, right? So it would have been close by, Pittsburgh. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm from Philly. I lived up near Scranton now, but when I went up to Pittsburgh, I lived in Scranton, and I pretty much like worked. I was late. Like I didn't learn to do special effects until I was like 30. I've done haunts for like 15 years before that though. But when I first started doing like films, I worked on a film kind of faked it till I make it kind of deal. He found out that I did like a haunt, and he was like, "Hey, I'm looking for effects for my movie," and I was like, "Oh yeah, I know what I'm doing. I'll do it." And then I came on, with my uncle. He was like, he was doing special effects at that time, like messing around, and we just kind of faked it until we made it, and came out pretty cool. And it was like, man, I could do this for a living. So I always knew about the Savini school, and just growing up a fan of his, and I was like, oh man, it'd be really cool to go there and learn how to do what I want to do. So I pretty much like worked for like 3 years without a day off, and saved enough money for so I can go up there and just go to school and not have to work and take care of my family. So yeah, I went up there it was a year and a half school, a program that was a year and a half, and then I stayed up there for like another year working in some haunts up there, being like their lead makeup artist and prosthetic maker. And then it was like, all right, where do I want to go from here? Do I want to go out west? And I knew I didn't want to do that because I got a family, and I know so many people that go out west, and it's a struggle for them, by themselves. So I just, decided I wanted to come back and, closer to the PA area. And I knew a lot of filmmakers in this area, so I got to like get my, my feet in the door just by working with them. And then start getting my name out there and working for all these people all over the place, and I just started doing my own thing.
Do you think that indie genre filmmakers will help keep the sort of practical effects tradition alive going forward?
I would hope so. I don't again, I don't know too much about CG. I don't know how to do it, so you'll never see it in art stuff. I just know, like, here's a really good example. There was a scene that we shot in Valentine Bluffs where I was like, wasn't really happy with the effect. And I was working with the editor, and he was like putting fake blood in there post, and I was like, nope, we'll just cut the scene. It doesn't look good at all. And it was crazy because he was like, give me a day to work on it and I'll see what I can do. And it was the scene with Rachel getting her hand ripped.
I was gonna ask. I was like, was that my scene? Yeah.
Yeah, it was. We shot that twice, and both times I didn't like. I mean, it looks cool, and it worked for what we wanted to. I just wanted to. I did a test in my house with my son in the bathroom, and we made the hand, and we ripped it, and it was bleeding out like I wanted it to bleed. And then when we got on set, it didn't work the way it did. It was supposed to. So I was like, man, and that was like, remember we were struggling with that for like the last hour. It was like,
so did you have like Rachel like wearing a fake rubber hand, and then you ripped the hand out?
No, we had her hand glued with a prosthetic, and she just held it on that log for a long time. And then when it came time to do the close up of the ripping, we kind of replaced that with the fake prosthetic hand we made of her hand. But what really sells it is the actors. Like, you had the sheriff, he's like, he tells her what they got to do, and before it happens she starts screaming and plays it off. And I think that's what sold it in post for me, where I was like, okay, it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. And the way it was cut together, we slowed it up in slow motion where it made it look a little bit more painful. And it worked, so, but that was a scene that was going to, at first I wanted to cut it from the film.
Out of curiosity, maybe each of you could give a story about the craziest or funniest incident that happened on set, if you're open to each talking about that. I don't know which one of you wants to go first, but
you have any offhand? I mean, the craziest is like definitely like catching COVID. Like, that was so crazy.
Yeah, you like almost died. That was horrible. It was horrible.
Yeah. As far as like funny, we had so many funny things like happen. Again, Lloyd Kaufman was hilarious. There's so many takes where he was.
How are you able to film with Lloyd Kaufman and not bust out laughing?
Oh, it was like, there was a couple of takes where we did. It was like, cut, wait, hold on, my bad, because I couldn't stop. Like, I couldn't keep myself contained from laughing. And but I remember the scene where he's talking to the people in the meeting, like the town meeting, and he kept forgetting Penelope's last name, and he just was making up his own names for her. It was different every time.
See, if I were on set for that scene And that part where he goes up to, I think it's the character is Penelope, where he goes up there and he's like, yeah, your decorations were great. Not! And he's
Yeah.
like yelling at her. I'm
Yeah,
just like, I would have been corpsing. I don't know how I don't know. That's a testament to the actors. They didn't just bust out laughing,
Oh, he was that whole scene was pretty funny. I remember like and again, we have like some bloopers coming out on the behind the scenes where you guys will see it, and
Oh boy.
a lot of it was him. He was just, I remember he was like the deputy says like the deputy says something to him about like uh is the chief okay with this, or is Paul, and he's like, listen, bozo, I can do whatever I want because I'm the mayor. Like that was just him, like being him, and
just improvising, Lloyd improvising.
calling him a bozo, and I was like, because he didn't know the guy's name. Kept forgetting his name, so he's just like make up names for them. But that was pretty funny.
I don't know if I'm trying to think. I know on other films together we have funny moments, like Hunting for Justice with the blood.
Oh yeah.
What happened with that?
Tom likes to torture me, and he was like, all right, we're gonna not giving away Hunting for Justice. It has been out for a while, so like go check it out. But I don't want to give it away, but it has been out for like years. But I get like stabbed through the back of my throat, and it comes out, like the knife comes out my neck while I'm on top of another actor, like we're canoodling, and he like stabs me, and before we're about there's a blooper of it before we're about to film it, he's like, all right, I'm gonna throw this blood on you, and I was like, okay, the way that you're angling the blood, I'm looking at your hand, and how the blood's gonna come out of this bucket, it's going to hit me in the face. He's like, no, you'll be fine, it'll hit you in the throat. I was like, Tom, listen to me, I'm watching you, and the way you're going to do that, it is not going to hit my throat, it's going to hit my nose and my mouth. He's like, no, Rachel, will be fine. I was like, all right. So he does it, and it goes like up my brain through my nose. I like eat most of it, and
it went all over her.
everywhere, and they had to like clean me up and do it again, and I was just sitting there like there's like a blooper of that. It's pretty funny, but the actor that was stabbing me was like, oh, well, you missed her chest, like kind of went all over her face, like you said, and just like funny moments like that. But I don't know if there's anything from Valentine Bluffs, because we were on such a tight schedule and we wanted to do such a good job. I mean, I'm sure something happened that I'm forgetting.
I remember walking up the street with Zach. Remember that was like a late thing, and it was like, all right, we need to go outside, and that like we had the block decorated.
Oh yeah, like they were like, quick, decorate this wall, and we were like, okay, and we were just like sticking hearts everywhere, and like then running back to our place, or like me walking in public when we would go out to like get food with blood all over my face, and people would be like,
yeah, that was a scene that was like at it last minute kind of deal. And I remember like we walked, like didn't you just walk into the restaurant and be like, hey, can we shoot here? And they were like, no.
Yeah, we're like, okay. Well, they saw me, and I was like earlier, and I was like all bloody, so they were probably like, we don't know what you're doing. So I was like, all right.
What are some of the reactions like when people are just seeing you all in this bloody makeup?
Right. So sometimes I'm in the makeup for so long, I don't like remember. Like obviously I know my face is messed up, but I don't like remember like what other people's reaction would be, because everyone on set just treats you normal for like 12 hours. And then like the last day of shooting in the film, we went to a Subway. We were waiting for like a long time, and we wanted to eat, so we were like, let's go to a Subway. And I walked in, and one guy was like, oh my, and like my face was just all messed up, and I was like, oh, we're shooting a horror film. And he's like, all right. And then he like looks at the two dudes I'm with, and then looks back at me like, blink twice for help. I'm like, no, like I'm totally cool. And then I'm eating this like hoagie in Subway with like my cheek missing, and like and people were just like, what is going on? And I'm like, I'm filming, sorry. It's like kind of weird, but no one's like freaked out yet. I remember one film, Town of Evil, that we did, there was like cops going by, and we were using a fake cop car, and I got out of the cop car and I was like destroyed, and I just remember cops being like, should I be concerned? But then I think they saw the cameras and stuff, so yeah, there's been a lot of times like that.
It's actually a good segue for the last thing I wanted to touch upon here, and I'm sorry I kept you guys so long, but
good.
So you mentioned Town of Evil. That is in post-production right now, right, Tom? Could you tell us a little bit about it?
No, I don't know. Like, I basically was brought on to like kind of write and direct the film because it was like some problems with the director before that, and I was just a special effects artist on it. And then next thing you know, I was hired, like brought on to, not even hired, just brought on to direct, and I had to recast everybody and brought in, and then there was problems with the sound, major problems with sound, and then
I'm not
the
gonna lie, that sounds like a storyline out of like a possible sequel to a movie like Living in Oblivion with Steve Buscemi, where it's like you have like
yeah,
the special effects guys working, and then the director quits, so now the special effects guy has to take over. It would be a
that's what it
great
was.
comedy.
It was like that, and then it got handed off to the editor, and they're like, "Well, where's half the footage?" And they couldn't find it, and it took forever to get that, and then it was just major problems, and then eventually I was just like, you know what, I don't want nothing to do with the film, and I just gave the film out like back to them, and like I didn't want nothing to do with it because we offered to help fix it. Um, we had a sound composer. Our sound composer for Valentine Bluffs is amazing. And he offered to help fix it, and they were like, no, no, we're gonna do it. I was like, all right, and then nothing happened with the film.
Yeah,
And
which
the
is
same,
a shame because I was super stoked.
yeah, it was a fun. It was I met some really cool people on there, but it was a difficult project. It
I,
was
I was gonna say too, I'm glad you mentioned the sound for Valentine Bluffs because I see so many movies today, and I don't know that it's necessarily the fault of the people involved with the film, but I think it just has to do with the way digital works and whatnot. But sometimes I'll watch a movie and I'll be like, what was that line they just said? And I'll keep rewinding it. I'm like, what are they saying? And I break down and put the subtitles on. But I didn't really have that problem as much with Valentine Bluffs. The
yeah.
sound design is really important.
Yeah.
Sound, I think, is like I would say 80% of the film. It's so important because I was a part of like so many films that had bad sound, and you can't even watch, you can't even enjoy, no matter if the acting's good, the story's good, or whatever. I worked on a project. It was $1 million budget project, and it was shot with Reds, like the top of the line cameras at the time when they came out, and awesome cast, good story, cool effects. And then when I went to the premiere, the sound was so bad, and I was like, "Man, you just can't fix that." And they were like, "No," and nothing happened with that film. So like sound ruins everything. This was probably the first film that we had a good sound person in a long, like the last three films, I would say that. The last three films we had like problems with sound, and
And
uh
Valentine Bluffs is your first foray into like feature filmmaking
yeah,
too,
yeah,
right?
it was my first feature film. Um
Was that a learning curve?
oh yeah, yeah, definitely. I learned a lot making this film, and I learned a lot from making all the films that we worked on, like the shorts and stuff like that. And it's like, each act I learned this, like every actor is different. Like you can direct an actor certain ways and other actors you can't, you know, like I'll give very little direction to Rachel. I'll say, hey, this is what I'm looking for, this is what I want, and then she'll go and do it. And I don't really have to direct her too much on set. But if
Is
I
that
do,
just because you both have a rapport with each other at this point?
yeah, yeah, I think it's just like the chemistry with us and like other actors I have with like certain people. Um, just plays off pretty well. Like, and we work well together, and it's fun. We make it fun. Um, some actors you can't do that. Like I've heard one actor said that they were having a hard time taking direction. And it was like I was trying to tell them what I wanted, and they weren't getting it. It was like okay, and I had to like go and talk to someone else and be like, hey, can you explain what I'm looking like? Tell me what I'm looking for. And it was like, all right, and that was the one thing I learned. Every actor is different. Um, and I really believe I know why so many directors work with the same actors, because they have a good record with them, and they can trust them to bring their A game to it, and scheduling, budgeting, such like all this was like this was the biggest budget film that I had to work with, so and it was like basically us trying to budget this film out, and so many times where you're like, do we have enough money to do this? We're not going to know that until we do it. Um, so yeah, like not that like you know here's a good example of like budgeting and scheduling. We had everything scheduled for a certain day. We had hotels. We had Airbnbs, not hotels. We had flights booked. and then we had to postpone that day. So trying to contact the Airbnbs and explain to them, like sometimes they were like, I think the one was okay. We're like, all right, well, we'll give you half your money back. The other one was like, no, you can't get any money back. Flights, they don't give back the refunds. So, like a lot of that was like a big learning experience there. Just like, okay, if we're gonna book people like that where we have to bring them in, through an airline or whatever, like we got to make sure that we're good to go on that schedule. Hotels, making sure that the cast and crew have a hotel. We were pretty fortunate on Valentine Bluffs because we had the Airbnbs and we had like the cast stay in one and the crew stay in one. But it was all good because everybody got along. It literally was like, I'll say this, you'll hear this a lot in the industry. You'll hear people say, "Oh, it's like a family," and that's not always the true. I've worked on sets where like, oh, we're such a family, we're all friends, we're all cool, and then like 3 months later, you're like, hey, can I get footage for it? And like, no, and you don't get the footage for 5 years or sometimes never. What I'm saying? So this film, was my first time like taking charge of everything. I had a really good group around me, and I think that shows in the film. Just having like, we didn't have a lot of people, but the people that we did have, they all like came and did what they had to do.
They were committed to it.
Yeah, and a lot of people wore multiple hats. Like our producers were like building sets. They were acting. Chuck was on set building sets, and he had to get in the character to be in the minor. So everybody played a big role and multiple roles. And again, that was like a big learning experience for me. Like, what we can do and what we can't do. What we shouldn't do.
I wanted to give you both a chance to talk about any upcoming projects you have. I know, Rachel, I saw that you're going to be in that upcoming movie with Bill Moseley and Lauren Rivera, The Fetus. And then also you have another one coming up, Backwoods. I don't know if you could talk about some of your upcoming projects, but
The Back Road.
The Back Road. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, don't be sorry. We actually filmed that. Was that 7 years ago?
7 years ago, we shot that. I did all the effects for that, and we don't even bother with them anymore.
Yeah, it's super sad. Backwards, I think it's out on Blu-ray, finally, so people can like see that. The effects are great because they're by Tom. On set, that was definitely a hard experience, but it helped me grow as an actress. Obviously I watch it now and I'm like, oh, because like I watch myself and each time I'm like, I could have done better there because it was like 7 years ago. But for my first feature, I was like, okay with how it went. The Fetus, I'm excited for that. I
actually heard about it a few months ago, and I just heard Lauren was in it and that Bill Moseley, and I love Bill Moseley, so I was like, oh my God, I'm pumped for this. And then I see that you're in it and I'm like, oh, this is really badass.
Yeah. I think we filmed that in the summer. I think it was in August. I think we actually filmed that like May, June or July, August, like the summer. I was only a day player, but it was an amazing experience. And I have a very short role, but I've seen
it's a short role, but you're not like an extra or anything. Like you have a like dialogue.
I say words. Yeah, like okay. So I don't want I say words. I don't want to like give it away, but I don't know what I can say. I don't know what I can say. I don't want to give it away. I'm actually not, because I think what I do in the film will give it away if I explain what's happening.
Okay. Yeah. We don't want to spoil it. Yeah.
Yeah. So you'll see me. I say words. It's a cool part. I liked it. I had fun. I saw some rough drafts of it and it's gonna be awesome. It's really
What's can you give like a plot synopsis of it without giving out giving away the plot too much?
It's kind of not not really, because knowing me, I'll talk too much because I do that. But basically this girl, Lauren, gets in a predicament with her boyfriend, and she finds out that she is pregnant, And I'll just leave it at that, because anything else will be giving it away. Because the beginning of it, you're like, what's happening? Because I've seen the drafts, and you're like, oh, what's happening, and then it's like boom, and you're like, oh man, like, oh geez. So I don't
So we're
wanna...
talking like pregnancy horror, you know?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's really good. And then you learn more about her character and what she struggles with, and then the whole story kind of like comes together. So I probably said too much already, and Joe, the director, is probably like, shut up. But it's very good. I've seen rough drafts of it, and Lauren obviously crushes it. Everyone on set crushes it, and I'm super stoked to watch it. It's definitely like plot twists in a way. So like things that you aren't expecting happen, and you're like, oh shit. But that's why I'm like, I need to stop talking, because I probably gave too much away already. Like, I don't know, but
Didn't you shoot that up near me in
I
Scranton?
did. Yeah, I did. I was like, oh man, like I was only needed for like a couple hours on set, and then I had to like go home quick. But I was like, this is like my horror like location, because whenever we shoot our horror films, it's always in that location. So it's kind of like, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I hope we didn't give away too much, because I
I
want to
hope so
contact
too.
Joe
Now
or
I'm like,
Lauren when
oh
it comes
God, what
out.
did I say? I'm like freaking out now. But um yeah, I mean, I'll get yelled at. I mean, we'll find out soon enough. I don't think I gave away too much, but
So you're, in other words, you're well on your way to becoming an official Scream Queen.
that would be cool. I definitely, for real purposes of like my demo reel and submitting to agents, I definitely am trying to do more comedy or dramatic pieces, because my whole reel is just horror, and my agent's like, maybe we can sprinkle in some comedy, and I'm like, I'm trying. So I have been auditioning for more, just for like my real purposes, because when agents
Yeah,
see...
it can be rough getting like I know a few actors that have been like typecast, and like
Yeah.
that's horrible too when that happens.
Yeah, so like that's great. Like I will take like any offer I'm given, it's great, but I definitely want to play all different aspects. So I'm like, maybe, like I told Tom, I was like, maybe next time I could be the killer. And he's like, maybe, I like watching you die, but we'll talk about it. So we'll see.
We have some stuff in the works,
Yeah.
but
So...
no, I you said like a screen queen. I think she is one already.
Oh, stop.
She's amazing, and it's sad. It's like some of the stuff that like even like the lead role that she has, you're not really going to see much of. Um, I don't know what's going to happen with that stuff, but every time I worked with her, she every time I have a script, or I'll even write us like a part in the script for her character, knowing that she can kill that role. But if you hear her scream in Valentine Bluffs, like that's her. There's nothing digital over hers. Like we actually had to overdub someone's scream in the film with somebody else's. But hers is legit, and she's definitely it's awesome. Like when she screams and sells that whole hand being ripped, at the end, it's awesome. Like it made me keep that scene in there.
So, Tom, is there anything else that you're working on coming up that you can talk about?
Yeah, we actually have been in talks right now, but we have our first pre-production meeting next week or 2 weeks. For it's an anthology called Sick and Twisted Tales. We shot like a concept of it already, like and release it on Halloween. You can go on our YouTube channel and see it, the We's in Hollywood. Yeah, that's going to be the next thing we're going to do. I know a lot of people keep asking me about a sequel for Valentine Bluffs. I don't think that's anywhere in the future right now. It's hard. It's hard to dedicate your life for 2 or 3 years. Well, like a lot of the cast and crew were like 2 years. Me, the producer, were 3 years without any kind of pay, without making a dime. And I was turning down jobs just so I can make this film. Like that's the passion I had for it, to wanting to get this made. And I'm just glad like everybody's enjoying it. We've been getting a lot of good feedback from it. I'm glad people want to see another one. You never know, but maybe a couple years down the line, we'll think about doing another one, or venture into another fan film. I don't know. We'll see.
Do you
But
think we're in a really exciting period when it comes to indie movies? Because you're from PA. I mentioned Justin Seaman earlier with the Barn movies from PA. It sounds like we're having a renaissance of what I would call like regional cinema that's like outside the Hollywood box.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I mean, I'll tell you what, I've seen a lot of indie films in the last couple of years that I enjoyed better than Hollywood films. You know, that was something like I'm a big fan of Halloween, and I did not like the last Halloween at all. I remember coming out of we were coming out, like we were going into the theater to see it, and there was someone coming out, and uh I didn't know this person. He just came out and he was like, "Oh my God, where'd you get that shirt?" And I had the Valentine Bluff shirt on, and he was like, "I ordered mine like a year ago, and I still haven't gotten it yet." And I'm like, "Oh my God, that's cool!" Like, you know, you supported the film, and I didn't want to tell him like who I was, because like I just wanted to get in there and like and watch the movie. And he's like, "No, dude, like how'd you get it serious? Because like I don't know if I'm getting screwed." And then I was like, now I feel obligated. I got to tell him like, "Hey, no, you ain't getting screwed." The shirts are like have been ordered, and it's like a one-shot deal. I just got mine because I had like you know, the printed of it, like, you know, to show everybody like this is what we were gonna get. And that was funny. Like, but we went in to see Halloween 3, and I remember him coming out of the theater and was like, "Oh, I know Valentine Bluff's gonna be better than this film." And I was like so bummed out that I was not gonna enjoy that film. And when I left there, I was like, man, I was not happy with that film at all.
Well, it's cool now because like I think people, you know, you can get like a very professional like red camera for, you know, a relatively good price now. I think the barrier to entry for independent filmmakers has lowered. In some ways that's not the best thing, because you have a lot of people that don't know what they're doing making films now. But you also have people that I don't think could have made really, you know, professional looking films now able to do that in this environment.
Yeah, and you don't need a red camera to make it look nice. You know, ours wasn't shot with a red, and I think it looks pretty good. You know,
Yeah, I was just using that as an example, but yeah.
yeah, no, I definitely think like, again, I think like the fan films like they took it to like a level that where you know people want to get, you know, and I think that was pretty cool, you know, to see like the production value in these fan films are high. Like they're like we shot in a mine. Like I don't think we could have got a mine for like we couldn't have built a mine for $1 million, you know. So we shot on a really like low budget, you know, in 9 days, like like a really hard shoot schedule. I think it was pretty good for what we, you know, for what we had to deal with. So yeah, I'm just looking forward to seeing what we do next, and hoping people enjoy it.
Well, I think that's a great note to end on. Thank you, Tom and Rachel, for coming on Parallax Views. And my listeners, if they want to watch Valentine Bluffs, it's on YouTube.
Yeah.
In 4K.
Yeah, go right on Weeds in Hollywood. It's right there. We actually have a contest coming out too.
Oh, really? Do you want to?
Yeah, did you see it? We just put out a post for all the Easter eggs. If you have, I believe, until April 17th. We just released a video. It's actually pretty funny if you haven't seen it. Where I go in there and I like goof all my lines, and then I paid an actor to be me. Did you see that, Rachel?
I didn't. No, when was that posted?
We just posted it the other day.
Okay, I'm so out of the loop. I'll have to, it's on our like,
Yeah, right on the YouTube page.
okay.
But yeah, if you go on there and you can get all the Easter eggs that we put in Valentine Bluffs from the 81 and the remake, we're giving away a really cool prize, a couple of prizes actually.
And the YouTube it's Wees in Hollywood.
Yeah, right on Wees in Hollywood. Just type that in and then you'll see the video for contest.
Okay, well, I hope everyone checks out Valentine Bluffs, and I wish both of you the best with your future projects. Thanks again.
Thank you.
You.
Bye, guys.
Well, that does it for this edition of Parallax Views. Check out Valentine Bluffs on YouTube. Just type in Valentine Bluffs or Valentine Bluffs My Bloody Valentine fan film. You'll find it very easily. As always, if you appreciate the work here I do at Parallax Views, please consider supporting me on Patreon at patreon.com/parallaxviews. One more time, that's patreon.com/Parallax Views. And with that being said, happy Valentine's Day!
Why don't we have a Valentine party? Yeah! Yeah, a party! Anybody want a beer?
You're invited to a party for lovers. But be careful. You may lose your heart. My Bloody Valentine, rated R.